And we are now recording.
You can see my screen, right?
We can. It's a little bit small. I don't know if you want to zoom in a little bit.
Can you see that now, or?
It'll be fine either way.
Yeah, just.
And then I think if you do a Command plus, it'll zoom in as well.
Yeah. So leave your names and meeting notes. So first of all, some really quick progress update. Other than the design document that we have been developing. About the SIG architecture, I still haven't heard from Brian. I think he's like occupied by other stuff. So Erica last time mentioned that like we could all reach out to people that we know in SIG architecture. So I think you guys could, also contact people that you know in the SIG architecture to gather like their opinions, or whether we should do a joint meeting or whatever to introduce the effort we have been doing here. I think that would be great. Okay. And so I just got notification yesterday that the talk Torian and I submitted was rejected. So yeah, the only hope now is the SIG working group dedicated sessions. So if we got that approved, then we will have like a lot of time to concentrate and discuss on this thing.
All right, that's fine. So we'll wait to hear back from them. Yeah, and I think that there might be other talks involving OPA and stuff like that. So there will be some policy talks that we did keep on you. So yeah.
Okay, so moving on, some update from the action items from last meeting. So I talked to my friend. The HBU speaker actually spoke at KubeCon last year, but he said that HBU has a very strict policy on, even attending like the Zoom meeting. It seems like it took him also quite an ordeal to get on the KubeCon last year. So he's unable to come over and discuss the requirement in person. But however, we could formulate the use case ourselves, and then I can run it by time, like off the record. That he could like comment whether we capture the problem correct, helping in an unofficial way to avoid any like legal or whatever requirements. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So who? We can try to formulate that together, but we might need someone to drive that.
Yeah, I can't remember who put the HBO use case in the first place.
I had suggested it on the first call just as an example.
Okay.
So the other option, if there's a concern about Zoom or video or recording, you can also use just a teleconference bridge. I don't know if there's a difference.
No, it's not that problem. It's just HBO overall just don't like their people to go out and share things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, they had something like some accident. I think some developer like took jab at their competitor, and it was recorded on YouTube, and since that, HBO has been quite reluctant to get people to share anything, really.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just a quick update. So let's go to our business today. First of all, to approve the suggestions that based upon last meeting's meeting notes. Okay, so first, the first impact is last meeting we agreed that we break the current motivation section into two sections. So we have the background section with all the problems identified and with the motivation that saying what we are going to do, broadly speaking, for policy working group. So is this okay?
I'm good with that.
Okay, and then I'll just merge it. Okay, the second revision is actually to add a template for use case so that we have a unified format to describe all these use cases. So if you could click over the link. So this is a template I drafted based upon the discussion last week. So we will have a persona ID, like the name of the persona for the use case, and then the persona's description, like it should be a short description, like what is required, what is the job of the day, and then it will be the policy requirement. So I think last meeting agreed that we should have a very specific requirement that could fall into the following, but not limited to these categories, so that people know what we are talking about here, rather than just high-level descriptions, words, such that. And the next is the architecture impact. So Torian suggested last meeting that we should explicitly identify the control point and the enforcement point, so that people know for a certain use case, like what will be the architecture impact. And then the last one is strawman policy description. So either using YAML or Regal file, or I think any format it fits. So give a direct description of what the policy might look like for this use case. So anything we want to add for the template?
I mean, I think that this is a good start, Howard. I mean, I would assume that this is for an individual use case, right? So I would assume that basically there would be many. We want to look at it from different points of view, potentially. Like we'd want to look at the HBO use case from multiple points of view. We'd want to look at InfoSec use case from multiple points of view. So yeah, so I would just imagine that it wouldn't just be like one section for persona, one section for description, and so on. Does that make sense?
So do you mean we need multiple personas for the use case?
I don't even know if it needs to change. I'm just saying that I would assume there'd be multiple per use case basically, and there may be multiple policy enforcement points per use case basically. So it's just if I read through this template, it makes me think that there's one of each of these things, and I'm just saying that there could be multiple. Yeah, maybe it's just as simple as saying persona IDs. There we go. Yeah. Does that make sense to you, Michael? Do you feel like the use case document should describe basically comprehensively the different personas, the different
yes. So I think I agree with that. I think being able to highlight for each of the different personas what are their concerns, what are their existing pain points. So a lot of the ways that we tend to structure internally is the notion of kind of the current pain points, the as is, the state of the art, and then the to be describing what would be better about it. And I think doing that for each of the different roles makes perfect sense. The implementation might be the same, but the way that the compliance officer interacts with the system, where maybe he's primarily concerned about the auditing versus the cluster operator who's actually defining policy versus the developer whose behavior is impacted by policy as he attempts to do things that are either approved or not approved. So the way that they interact with the system might be a little bit different, even though it's the same underlying implementation. But I think being able to highlight that may also show why we think having one work group that is looking at policy across the board is useful.
Yep.
Okay. Then I think we all agree on the current template.
Yep.
Okay. Let's get back. Okay, another modification is to add in the risk management use case regarding what the auditability policy look like. I think this is input from Michael. It should be fine. And Ali said auto scaling is another policy in Kubernetes. So I think we could add the category in the use case template. Okay. Okay, we don't have like further changes, so okay, let me just go ahead and merge those. Okay, so we can also delete this use case. Okay. So okay, moving on, like specific discussion on section 2 and 3. I think we've covered this part. Confirmed. Should be okay. Okay, so let's go over the existing use cases and see if anything like skeleton-wise should be added. So for the first one, the HBO one, we have like this is like the challenges, large traffic spikes, scale up operator policies. Okay, I think maybe we could like identify like leads for each use case, so that we could work on it like individually and then.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because I feel like we're at the point where some of this stuff just has to be driven maybe individually.
Yeah. So we could work like offline simultaneously and get back to the meeting and discuss. So Michael, can I put you on this one?
Sure, that'll be fine.
Yeah, I think
I will say though, I think honestly, my interest is probably going to lie more in the second one, and government risk management and compliance.
Okay.
I think that would be the one I'd be more interested to help drive forward.
Okay, so I think I put both you and Erica here, since I remember you guys had the most input on this stuff. And also Spike, I remember. Yeah, Spike said a lot of things on this one. And capacity leasing, this could go to Torrent?
Yeah, that came from a customer, so I can follow up with them and get more info.
I can help out on that a little bit as well. I've been talking to some clients. They have some requirements around the space, so I can work with you and give some input on that.
Okay. Sorry, that's Khaled, is that right?
Yeah, it's Khaled.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Right. Oh shit.
KHA.
Okay.
There's a H in there, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Do we have like any idea for a fourth one, or shall we just have these three to begin with?
I would just keep it.
I think we're going to say the same thing. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just.
I think we're better to have three that have more quality and more clarity than four with more quantity.
Yeah. So I think the task here is that let's adopt the template into each of the narrative of the use case, and for the next week's meeting, we could actually have like 3 template-based descriptions of the use cases, and I think we could then fine-tune still in a skeleton level for each use case, and have a initial like semi-completed use case description. So would that be okay?
I think that sounds good. I'll reach out to Erica and see if she can coordinate with her to try to define the second use case, second scenario.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to section 3. We agree the title will be like scope. Scope will be like a step forward of the background or motivation that we have a specific set of scope for this document. And then we have like requirements. I think the requirements should be like deducted from the use cases, so that it is like a logical like deduction from section 2. And gaps. I think gaps should be like derived from the requirements. So I think if we organize section 3 in this like structure, then we should have a pretty nice logical flow for the document. So we have the problem statement from section 0 and 1, and we have 3 use cases that providing like an overview of the impact and requirements and so forth. And then in section 3, we provide the specific like scopes and the specific requirements from section 2, and then based upon the scope and the requirements, what are the gaps existing? So sounds okay?
I think so. As I look at it, Standard interface. At that level, I think that's fine for the requirements. I think the common policy description and language, getting some understanding of how that plays out within the existing capabilities. Is that a requirement we can really meet? Will all other languages fall into place?
Yeah, let's go into like individual sections later, one by one. But just overall speaking, is this structure I just mentioned for the whole section reasonable? Like we have scope, requirements, and then gaps.
I think the structure is reasonable. I tend to think that for scope, it's going to be a mirror image of what we identified as the motivation. And in terms of gaps,
yeah.
I expect we'll get into just more specifics about where there is a lack of capability. So where we were general about lack of common language, lack of consistency between them, maybe there we really have to come up with specific examples to make it more tangible.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go over one subsection at a time. So for scope, we need to capture like the things that we outlined for the problem identification. So here we identify lack of big picture, coordinations, consistency, and auditability. So if we could translate those into the scope, so that would be to define overall policy architecture. To establish coordination, this will include language, to ensure and for no consensus. Cross filter, which means okay, so these are the like 4 points if we mirror back from the background on the motivation. So I think there's a problem here is on the fourth one, the auditability is like a rather specific use case. So shall we like include it in some of a more general description? Since if you're looking at the upper three, it's like general, like the general requirement we are looking for a pluggable architecture, like common language. So, I mean, could we like group auditability, for example, litmus test under some like overall description of a requirement?
I mean, I think that this, yeah, I guess this falls in underneath one of probably, it does feel like it's not one of these top level things. So yeah, I'm fine with moving it. I mean, I think it falls under something else. Yeah, but I don't.
I think it's going to impact the gap analysis as we try to define what would a policy help drive. I mean, a config map definitely isn't a policy. A behavior that says that a certain kind of config map must exist with certain fields across all clusters, that might be where policy becomes interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I know, and I also meant for the auditability for the fourth item. So,
but I think for auditability, though, keeping that in the scope definition, right, to provide consistent auditability.
No, I mean auditability is just one use case, right, for policy. So it's like it's not like a general like these three, a general like high level scope.
So I could see consistent auditability moving under requirements.
Okay.
Because I think that does form a specific kind of requirement that they would all need to follow.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
So then what about the policy versus config? How do we include this in the scope?
I mean, I don't know if that necessarily belongs in the scope or not. I mean, there might be cases where policies are provisioned as config, right? Like, you know,
yeah,
or existing config objects, like. So yeah, I don't know how meaningful that is.
So maybe we put it in the gaps section. Like if there's something we could improve on the config side, some of the config files could be used just for policy, and vice versa. Is that reasonable?
I think so. At this level of detail, I think that's okay.
Sorry, I didn't catch you.
I agree. I think that's fine for that level of detail.
So shall we put it in the gaps or later sections?
Yeah, the gap is fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the goal there was just to kind of help people. If I remember correctly, like Spike brought this up, and the goal is to help people understand what we mean by policy when we say policy. So I don't know if it's like if it exists in the scope section or the gap section. We have to exist somewhere.
Yeah, I think so if we keep these three items, I think it should be good for us at the moment. So basically it means for this working group specifically, we're gonna like have like three output, right? There should be a overall policy architecture with all the needed descriptions for the architecture. There will be a common language and coordination mechanism there, and also there should be a like we should have ways to describe a pluggable architecture, how the pluggable works, right?
I agree with that.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, it should be pretty clear for scope now. Okay. Okay, then requirements. I think we should we could go back from after we have the use case, 3 use cases outlined more clearly. Then we could put like more stuff in here. And for the gaps, now we have the policy versus config gaps. So over the top of our head, do we have something else?
No, I mean, I think that those will fall out of the requirements analysis. And
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, feels good.
Okay. I think that will be pretty much we could get off the meeting today. So I would I added 2 references actually. So there are 2 links that capture my eye. So one is an article I read. I don't know I can't remember the author, but it means it mentions the pod node selector is actually a good policy, a good way of like policy enforcement. And there's a like new feature request on the affinity anti-affinity here. I think these should like closely related to what we are trying to do here on the implementation side, right? And the other one is there's a Google fella started this discussion on secure container isolation. So I think many of the security policies we discussed before, like we could have many input from this document for the security policy on a lower level.
Yeah.
Of course. So if you guys have time, I encourage you to read through.
Those look like some great resources. I hadn't seen those. I'll definitely take a look at those.
Yeah. So if I like find anything, I will add into the reference and let you guys know. Okay.
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 Yeah. So we could, step by step build a awesome reference.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that would be all of the item I want to cover for today's meeting. That if there is no other business, I think we could conclude earlier.
So just to recap, our goal for next week is that we have completed the use cases and we're prepared to review those on the call and to then use that to drive an additional set of requirements or their capability from there.
Absolutely.
Okay. That sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I will also, in the meantime, capture this video and the one from last week and upload them to a YouTube channel and copy that into the policy document as well.
Yeah, just drop the video link here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Will do.
Great. Thanks.